So I've been wanting to make this video for a while. Back in September, I ran the Mammoth Trailfest 50K. And one of the things that was kind of frustrating for me was I had a really hard time finding really any race recaps. A couple of people have done videos like while they're doing the race, but very few people actually took the time to go through and kind of break down the race itself by section. So for instance, aid station to aid station. So I thought I'd take some time, put this together, go through kind of the background, what made me pick this particular race, the signing up, my training plan, consulting with a coach, and also just break down how I felt the race itself was, and how I completely got it wrong in terms of what I thought was going to be the hardest parts, what was going to be the easiest parts. So yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump right into my training plan, kind of how I broke the course down, and I'm very analytical. I work with data for a living, so the first thing I did was I went in and I actually broke down, as you can see here, every single mile of the course. I kind of came up with a way of quantifying the difficulty, my perceived difficulty of each specific mile, and kind of broke it down to what the starting elevation, the ending, how much of the mile was vert, how much was downhill, the percentage. Again, probably totally overboard, but it worked for me. This allowed me, while I was in training, while I was training at altitude, while I was training at miles that were similar to these, I was able to kind of get an idea as to what was a realistic goal for me. And I will preface all of this with saying I totally blew my goal. We'll talk about that later. But so you can see here, I entered the cutoff time. This coincides with what the actual where the aid stations are, what the cutoffs are. See here, I have what I estimated each of the splits at, based again on training. What I actually came in at right here. This right here is I'm just breaking down the seconds to a decimal point. So that's just, again, me being over the top. So, and then I went ahead and I put in here what was, did I do better or worse than I anticipated? So I started out obviously doing better. I went out the gate way too hot. I was with the group. I'm going to get to that here in a little bit with the starting, the way they do the starts. So let's go ahead and let's dive into the training now. Okay, so I started training in February. I had been running, not a ton. I did a lot of cross training. So you can see here my weekly mileage in the beginning was only it wasn't even 10 miles. And I built up relatively slowly. I went a little bit higher than that 10%. Then again, I've been running for years, just to try to stay in shape. So nothing crazy. The first 7 weeks was really, I just kind of called it building base, just building a base, getting used to 5 days. And this isn't necessarily what I planned. This is also what I ended up doing. So you can see, I got sick here. I ended up skiing on a rest day, so on and so forth. So when we get into block 2, this is where I start looking not just at mileage. So we got my weekly mileage here, but also we've got time here. Once I hit week 11, I'm sorry, let me back up. I didn't realize I was scrolled down. So once we hit week 5, I started incorporating rest weeks where I would reduce my volume, reduce my time. I was looking for, increase in time as well as mileage. Got my little 16-week flag here. So as you can see, my mileage is building, sometimes slowly, but it is getting up there. And then At 14 weeks out, I really start looking at my vert. At this point, I consulted with a coach. Give her a shout out here. Um, I'll put all her information in the description. She was awesome. I really wanted my first ultra to be my own plan. That being said, I did get to a certain point where I was like kind of lost and I really wanted to consult with someone. So I ended up paying her for a couple consulting sessions. Really glad I did. She told me about some stuff that I just hadn't even thought of. So primarily vert, primarily intentional downhill days, that kind of thing. So once we get done with this week 14 here, we're going to go into the final block. Now this is where things for me got a little bit interesting because I rolled my ankle really bad here just a month out from the race. Thought I was done. Wasn't done. Clearly, I did it. I finished. Fast forward a little bit farther down, and I ended up traveling the week before the race for work, and of course, the week before I got sick. So went into my chest. It was horrible. I again didn't think I was going to be able to do it, but I was past the point of really getting any credit towards the next year. So I just said, you know what, I'm going to go. I'm going to do as best I can. And that's what I ended up doing. So this injury really screwed stuff up for me. I ended up having my peak week 2 weeks before, which I really was trying to hit more like 60 to 70 miles. It didn't happen. My peak week was just over 50, as you can see, with about 7,000 feet of vert. So, and then I ended up, I actually printed this out and laminated it and put it in the back of my phone, and I gave it to my wife and my parents so that as I was coming into aid stations, they could see kind of where I was falling. So these first two aid stations here, I actually came in at under 8-hour pace, which again is telling me that I went out way too hot. My goal was 8 hours. Didn't happen. I ended up coming in just under 10 hours. Again, we'll get to that. My moving time was 8 hours and 40 minutes, so I took way too much time at aid stations. We'll get to that later, though. So this was actually really useful. They had one, I had one. So as I was coming in and out of aid stations, I kind of knew what I was looking at. So I could see how many miles, what it was going to put me at total, the total vert, the total downhill, as well as, depending on what time I come in, kind of what I'm looking at as far as a finish time. So again, this was awesome. Let's talk now about race day. So the prep is done. I've got my ankle wrapped because it's still giving me some issues. I actually didn't sleep too bad the night before. Training, I slept absolutely horrible if I had a long run or whatnot. And just the anticipation and the weather leading up to the event, like it rained for a couple of days. So it was super humid. But ended up waking up at 5:30, had my same cup of black coffee that I have every morning after I had a water bottle. So I did get up, started hydrating, then I had my coffee, and then I ended up having just an English muffin with just a little bit of butter. That's all I put on it. I didn't put a lot, I wanted low fat carbs, carved up the night before, just really easy to digest foods. So get to the start line there. We're going to release everybody in two groups. So it was 8 hours and faster, and they had signs basically lining everybody up, and then anybody that was from 8 to 12 hours. So again, my goal was 8 hours. I decided I was going to line up in the first wave, which was up to 8 hours, but I was going to be at the back of the 8-hour pack. So we go ahead and we start, and the group that I was in was not moving at 8-hour pace. We were moving quite a bit quicker. In the first couple miles, you're running on a bike path and on the road. They actually had part of the road kind of closed down. So you're running on a bike path. There's lots of room. If you want to walk, it's no big deal. If you want to run past people, super easy. When you get in a little bit and you turn and you start to go through the campground, which I'll go ahead and show here. You go through the campground and then you start going straight up the ski run. Again, it's fairly easy to space yourself out. There is right before the ski run, there is a small, very small creek crossing, and everybody bottlenecked there because it goes from this, you're running through a campground and it bottlenecks at this creek. Everybody backs up. I took that as an opportunity to go ahead and shed a layer. So I shed my layer there. I took off I had like a windbreaker, the Patagonia Houdini jacket on. So I took that off, and we get through that and we start going up that ski run. Now, my coach just kept telling me that I really needed to keep my heart rate down the first half of the race. Didn't happen. Like, I'm going up this ski run, I'm power hiking up it. Obviously, I'm getting caught up in the energy of the event, but I look down and I'm like 160, 170, not even running, just power hiking up this thing. So once we turn on to single track off of the ski run, people are still on top of each other, and it was, we were just passing each other left and right, and it was like, you either hold pace or you're just constantly stopping. So I ended up holding a pace a little stronger than what I really wanted to. But I ended up coming into Twin Lakes in just about an hour. So I was really happy with that. There was 5.2 miles to get to Twin Lakes, 1,000 feet of climbing, 470 feet of downhill. So in that section, I did drink both flasks. I refilled. I ended up actually arriving at 8:43. So about an hour and 10 minutes to do that 5.2 miles. Topped off one flask of Tailwind, ended up getting the tea. It's not the business, didn't sit well. Filled the other with water. So the next section is 3.6 miles from Twin Lakes to Duck Pass, 964 feet of vert and 458 feet of downhill. Came in there at about an hour later. It was 9:45. I was still 10 minutes ahead of 8-hour pace. Used the restroom, ate some crackers, had a gel, refilled both bottles, one Tailwind and one water. That section from Twin Lakes to Duck Pass was really not that bad. Felt like it was pretty flowy. You go up and over. There's one, coming right out of Twin Lakes. You do have a pretty good climb. Shouldn't say pretty good. It's short, but it will get you breathing hard. So the next section after that, so leaving Duck Pass, you're going to Horseshoe Lake. It's about 4.5 miles, a little over 500 feet of climbing, 700 feet of downhill. This is a pretty gentle section, has a good amount of shade, great views. There is one good climb coming out of the Duck Pass aid station. I took that time to eat a little bit more, and I ended up arriving at Horseshoe Lake at 11:11, which was just over 8-hour pace. Probably took a little too much time here. I spent 10 minutes with my wife. So typically crew aren't supposed to come to Horseshoe Lake. My wife was actually volunteering, so she had my bag there. I tried to eat. I made these rice balls that the coach gave me a recipe for, and they were really good when I made them. I legit had to choke this thing down at that aid station. It did not go well. And I ended up making a big mistake here. So I ended up ditching my jacket and ditching my gloves. So I ended up leaving there after 10 or 15 minutes. I added a flask so that I ended up leaving with 3, 2 water, 1 Tailwind, and then I also had my my salt tabs. And I'm glad I had those. So from here you have a climb coming right out of Horseshoe, and it continues to climb, but you have the Dragon's Back ahead of you. And what's really discouraging is, I think about so you have about 4.5 miles to get to the summit, and about a mile and a half in, you end up going downhill. So you're like looking to your left, and you've got the Dragon's Back right there, perfectly in view, and you're going downhill, which is a little discouraging, but sections of that were runnable. Then you get on to the Dragon's Back, and this I actually was my biggest feared section, and I ended up doing great. I was able to power up it, did plenty of vert in training, and I live at higher altitude, and I trained at altitude. So a lot of people were sitting in sections, they were getting dizzy. I was able to pass a lot of people. So I will say though, once we got up over 10,000 feet, it was cold. It was windy, it was cold. I wish I had my jacket. I wish I had my gloves. That was a big mistake. And when I ended up getting to the top, I was done. So much so that one of the medics at the top, my family ended up heading up to the top, and I'll touch on that here in a minute, was just watching me. I guess I looked really pale. I just wasn't doing well. So up to that point, that first 18 miles, I wore my Brooks road shoes, but I did end up changing into my Solomon Speed Cross at the top. I did a fresh change of socks. Crews are allowed at the summit. You get reduced gondola tickets. So my parents, my daughter, and my wife were at the top. They brought food. I do have some dietary restrictions, so I wasn't able to eat. They have pancakes at the top, which is really cool. I wasn't able to enjoy that. But I did have a peanut butter sandwich. I had some pickles. I had some pickle juice. Other than that, I drank about a half a can worth of Coke. I ditched one of my flasks. I refilled 2 bottles. I had one with Tailwind, one with water. And ultimately, I dropped from 8-hour pace to 9-hour pace on the climb. So some of that was I was tired, I was cramping. Some of it was just bottlenecks going up the Dragon's Back. But I left Horseshoe at 11:20, and I arrived at the summit at like right around 1:15, which was, now I'm on 9-hour pace. And I will say I felt pretty destroyed at that point. So spent about, I'm not entirely sure, but I think around 25 minutes on the summit, which was probably longer than I needed to. But again, in hindsight, I lost a lot of time at the aid stations, more than I probably needed to. So, okay, summit to main lodge, 3.8 miles, like over 2,000 feet of descent, 130-ish feet of climbing. Again, it wasn't much. So my quads were shot on this part, and coming off the summit, it's a little slippery. People were blowing past me. I just could not hang with holding a strong pace. When we got a little bit further down, I was able to pick up my pace a little bit. I only took about 40 minutes to cover that 3.8 miles, which was still good. In normal conditions, I would have been a lot faster. But I arrived at Main Lodge feeling completely revitalized. So that was a good thing. So when I got to Main Lodge, my family were there, and not sure if I mentioned this prior, but crew can go to the summit, get reduced gondola tickets. So they went up for me to arrive at the summit, and then they were down at the bottom when I got to Main Lodge. So I had some more Coke. I had another half of a peanut butter sandwich. And at this point, I was pretty happy with my hydration. I think I was kind of slacking on my nutrition, but I had to pee like 2 or 3 times in 3.8 miles. So that was good. But my coach wanted me taking in around 700 milligrams of sodium and around 60 grams of carbs. And this was at the point where it started to kind of go down. I did have that sandwich. And earlier when I said that I got a lot of things wrong, this was where things went wrong. So I was really worried about the Dragon's Back, but that ended up not being the stretch where I totally tanked. It was the next stretch. So from Main Lodge to Canyon Lodge is 7.1 miles. It's about 800 feet of climbing, 1,300 feet of downhill, and my legs were toast. So I had arrived at the Main Lodge at like 2:25. I did change my shirt, which was nice. I went from a long sleeve to a short sleeve, and I picked up a third flask. So I knew it was a longer stretch. I anticipated it taking me a little bit longer. However, I didn't think it was going to take me as long as it did. And it ended up taking me right around 2 hours to cover that 7.1 miles. And I was dead. This was the worst section for me. I struggled to get really any calories in. I didn't have the energy to run the flats. The downhills were super painful. I was hydrated. I had to pee twice in this section. But I really didn't get a second wind until I was almost at Canyon. And I think what happened was I knew that I had like a 5K left once I got there. So at this point, gels weren't sitting well. Nothing was really sitting well. And the salt tablets were just burning the back of my throat like no other. So I made sure, though, I kept up with the hydration and the salt. But I ended up getting into Canyon at like 4:42. And one of the other things that I will say drove me absolutely crazy is the second, I'd say when you're like 3 miles in. So you climb out of Main Lodge, which your quads, everything's just done at this point. At least it was for me. You can hear the bells and you can hear people at the finish line at this point. But mentally, you're still, somewhere between 7 and 10 miles from the finish. So that was a little bit rough. So I did have a little bit of chafing at this point, but not too bad. So I got a second wind coming in to Canyon. Got there at 4:40, 4:45-ish. My notes here say 4:42 to be exact. And I was in and out of Canyon. Like my family was there, but I just wasn't feeling like really socializing much. So I refilled, and I was in and out of there quickly. I felt really strong. There is a climb. You actually climb right back up to where you just came from. But then it's like a super cruisy, like 2.5 miles down to the finish. And I finished at 5:26 p.m. So just under 10 hours. It took me just about 40 minutes. And I pushed hard all the way down. Once I got to the top of the climb, I ran, I was passing people. And the worst thing that I possibly could have done when I got to the finish line was sit down, and I did. And my legs locked up, started shaking. And ultimately I had this vision that the night was going to go great. We were going to hang out by the campfire. We were camping at Twin Lakes. That didn't happen. I spent the whole night just pretty much shaking. I was cold. I was sick the week before, and I don't know if the congestion was just from running for extended amount of time at altitude, or if it was just that I was getting over my cold, but I was just coughing up nasty stuff all night. And the aftermath wasn't great, but ultimately I finished, and I was really happy. So what were my key takeaways? I should have done more downhill training. Didn't do enough. And after 18 miles, I was shot. I should have slowed down in the beginning so that I would have had more energy for the end. And I need to train my stomach more. I need to learn how to eat more towards the end of the race. So ultimately, it was a phenomenal experience. I can't wait to go back. I don't know that I'm going to do the 50K. I think I'm going to sign up for the 23K this next year, the 26K this next year. But I will do the 50K again. So, and there will be things that I do differently. So, yeah, don't underestimate that last 7 miles. If you're, an average mid pack to back of the mid pack runner, that 7 miles, that 800-foot climb really got me when I was, 24 miles in or whatever it is. So, nor could I handle the downhills or the flats. So I got that burst of energy at the very end, I think, because I knew I had 2 miles to go, but it totally did me in. So if you're looking at doing this race, I can't recommend it enough. It's a lot of fun. The energy is great. All the events. We had family and friends that did all the different events. So definitely sign up for it. Sign up, I think, is on January 21st. I plan on doing the 26K. So let me know if you plan on doing it.